Hey everyone, this is a very exciting first for me. I'm challenging one of my very first YouTube subscribers, Parkerzs, to a game, a 10-0 classical game, and let's see how this goes. Win or lose, I will be posting this, and hopefully we can get some good quality chess out of this. Going with my typical Caro Khan, let me tell him good luck. Yeah, I'm really excited to be able to play this. If he goes with the advanced variation, e5, we'll see how I would play against that. I'm not super certain, but he's going mainline, and I actually don't know if Parkerzs is the boy or girl. Sorry, it's just like a force of habit to assume. So typically the next move is knight g3, and I would then play bishop g6. If they play this move as they have, knight f3, then I think the move is, of course, the move is knight d7. And the idea is we're supposed to, I guess, prevent the knight from getting to the e5 square. So before you play bishop d3, I believe the correct, or at least the main line, is you want to try and harass white's bishop a little bit by playing h4. So I think typically what should be played is h4, and then I would respond with h6, and then h5. I would then play bishop h7, and then after that you would finally play bishop d3, at which point I should exchange bishops and you would recapture with the queen. And so by delaying or avoiding this pawn advance, you're allowing me to keep my kingside structure a-okay. And actually they say that it's a bit of a disadvantage when white or black has, not a disadvantage, but it's one of the points of the position that people discuss, is that black has a pawn on h6 and g7, which kind of limits the scope of this bishop on f8. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue developing my knight. So knight gf6. And let's see how they respond. Typical moves would be bishop d2, maybe even bishop f4. At any rate, I think my next response automatically will be e6, and then probably bishop e7 to castle. And so we are in a mainline Caro Khan with probably equality for black, but nothing more than that for sure. So by playing bishop g5, they are leaving this pawn a little loose. However, I don't think it's anything to be concerned about, as I also have my own loose b pawn, and if I were to say play queen b6, they could probably guard in a variety of ways. So there's nothing really happening right there, or there's nothing bad about that move. I'm kind of contemplating if I should play bishop e7 or bishop d6. I think I will play bishop d6 with an eye of maybe getting my queen to c7 and applying some pressure along the, what is that, the h2 b8 diagonal. Probably the only reason I'm playing this way is because I know this knight is guarding the f6 point, so if they do capture my bishop, my knight, I can just recapture. So I think one of the main ideas in the Caro-Kann for black is to fight to control this e5 square, and then black's real I guess point of argument is that they're getting control of the d5 square. So this is kind of where the battle will ensue, is controlling those squares and utilizing them effectively at the appropriate time. And I know another major theme is to try and avoid allowing white to get a knight to e5. Also, you need to be aware of, there are at times tactics. I believe there are some knight f5 tactics, however, I've never seen them. And look, my opponent finds a really nice move, and now I look a bit silly. Okay, so these games are always, of course, a learning process for myself as well. And I think I probably ought to admit that I have made a mistake in playing bishop d6, and this is kind of the point. Now this knight is hitting at both my knight and my bishop. So I don't want to give up that bishop, so I'm going to just pull it back. If they capture, I'll capture, and we might just have some mass exchanges happening. And maybe it'll go to a draw, and maybe we'll get to see some endgame technique from both sides. Yeah, so it looks like we're probably heading to some mass exchanges. It's very fun to do, to actually get to play and against one of my subscribers, even potentially get beat by them. You know, I'm very interested in learning the Caro-Kann personally, and I do have a book by, I think it's like Hoska. It's a very complex name for me to say, but certainly I could stand to read a little bit more. So I wonder what white is contemplating in this position. Yeah, and that's exactly right. So that's what you typically want to avoid in the Caro-Kann. I'm quite far behind in development, so I just want a castle. Hopefully I'm not walking into some crazy tactical mate. Let's see what kind of tricks I can conjure up. Okay, so it looks like they probably want to try and get this pawn break in. I'm going to try and be a little bit sneaky here. They might go bishop f4. What would I do in response to bishop f4? Maybe just knight h5. My idea to employ is a tactical idea. I want to bring my rook a8, and then if they're not careful, I'm going to capture with my queen, and their queen would then be hanging. But I suspect that they have sniffed that out. Let's give that a boot. One idea I have maybe to play so far everything is quite good. I don't see any problems with black's play. Let's try and stake out some space on the queen side. Yeah, so obviously tactics are looming here. Let's just kind of probe their rook. Excellent. And This knight is very strong. Let's try and break down some squares. I don't think they can do this push, but I feel this move is kind of blocking in my own bishop, so it might not be the best idea. Definitely need to be aware of that. Knight hop. Okay, and this will be the conclusion of the game because they're having a back rank issue. So after I capture here, they'll be compelled to bring their other rook back, and then I can just capture on e1. But overall, a very well played game, and yeah, I think Parkerzs played very resourcefully. Alright, let me tell them good game, and maybe invite them to play one more. I'll offer them a rematch. Okay, so we're playing both pieces, both colors, and let's see what kind of opening or defense they choose to go for. Okay, this is always an interesting one to face. I think the idea here is knight f3 and to fiend kit out the bishop. So knight f3. But I'm not certain that I want to play the main line where you fiend kit out the bishop. Maybe that's kind of his strong suit, and I don't want to kind of walk into an opening that maybe he knows quite well. Instead, I will kind of play a more tame opening and just try and outplay my opponent. There is a tactic which I've seen in the past, but I don't think I can set it up because I already misplayed it. But sometimes you could bring your bishop here to d3, and if you can remove this knight from c3, you can kind of sacrifice your bishop to give check, and if you can make the king recapture, then you bring your queen to c2, giving check, and you're hitting at this bishop here. So certainly something I've seen before, but never have I employed it yet. So let's try and come up with a strategy. I need to develop my bishop. So probably this was an imprecise move to push my pawn to e3. So let's go ahead and bring my queen on the same file. And that move does walk right into this knight. Knight hop, so let's go ahead and play a3 to prevent that from happening. And their idea, I think, is to bring a rook over. Let's keep developing. Bring our rook to opposite of the queen. And now I believe I have a way of winning the pawn. If I capture with my knight, then after, let's say, bishop captures, I can capture the bishop. But if they do that, then they may finally recapture my bishop, my knight with their bishop, and I would have to recapture with my pawn, because I would be potentially getting back ranked. So instead of I don't know that it's necessarily good for me to try and win a pawn here when I'm not fully developed. So what if I play b3 and then they push their pawn d4? I think that's fine for me. I think I'll survive at least. Need to be aware of this potential idea of bishop f5, but I think I can just meet that by playing bishop d3. Okay, and they saw the threat, so that's awesome. Now I need to be aware that they're hitting at this pawn, and it's certainly a weak point, and also this pawn is not so great. It needs to kind of be watched over. So what would be, where do my pieces belong, and what would be good for me? I feel black has a pretty good position here. Certainly I don't have any advantage. But I do feel that that move may have helped me, because now I can secure the bishop pair with knight a4. So we can go knight a4, and also this knight is loose after that move. Unfortunately, this drops the bishop here. So my next move I'd like to do is secure my knight by playing b4, and if they exchange, that's fine by me. And I think I'll have a very good position. Black now has this isolated pawn, which I can try and slowly gang up on. Typically, if you have an isolated pawn, the way that you want to go about the rest of the game is you want to first restrain the pawn by blockading it, let's say, with some type of knight move eventually. Then you want to exchange off the pieces, but also gang up so that you're applying maximum force. So you want to try and gang up on this pawn to force, let's say black in this case, into a defensive style of position, and then make exchanges that are favorable for you while they have to defend the isolated pawn. Very interesting. They're going for counterplay here. So their idea is they'll give up their light square bishop, and in turn they will take my knight. But this move does have the ultimate drawback that once my queen is here on f5 and their queen is here on c5, I will be able to capture their knight at the end of this, and they'll be obliged to take back with the pawn now and weaken their king side. Also, I do have this idea of sliding the rook over once the queen does end up on this square, and this knight is loose back here. So let's just go ahead with this exchange. Now, is there anything better than just recapturing? I don't think so. And if they bring their rook to d6, I do have several moves available to me. Maybe even just queen b2. And then I'd have to definitely be careful of the rook eventually sliding over, though. So if black doesn't play rook d6 and they play some other it's kind of... Okay, that's also a reasonable move. And... yeah, we can probably just exchange off. Pick up the pawn on d5. There's this neat tactic. If rook b8, I can just play bishop here. I can still simply play the bishop there. Okay, so playing the bishop there was incorrect, I would say. Rather, this is the proper move. Yeah, that was not tactically working. And even if they had taken, they may have gotten a lot for that. So they take my bishop with the pawn, I take their rook, but then they take this pawn, and I have to be very careful about this now passed pawn, and I have to really try and make sure I get it back. So here we see that black has this isolated pawn, and kind of on defensive duty here. And my goal now is to try and gang up on that pawn. So I probably want to double up rooks, and also I need to probably make some look for my king so I get rid of my back rank issues. And they decided to resign. Tell my opponent good games. And with that, I think I will conclude this recording. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed.